this as well, is don't be fearful of these scenarios because we ended up getting a very strong buyer. I chose this example. I had two previous examples where we had scenarios where it was water in the basement. The buyer backed out. We amended the seller's disclosure statement, and we got another better offer.
My name is Kevin McIntosh, and this is the Closing Table, where we talk to experts about their experience in real estate all across the country. Let's go. Welcome to the Closing Table Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin C. McIntosh, ready to show us exactly what's going on in his market in real estate. Another real estate professional, Jason Borregard. What's going on, Jason?
Not too much. Busy, but excited to be here for sure. Absolutely.
No, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here. We appreciate that, sir. Now, first and foremost, before we start grabbing all the education from you, let's get to know you as a person, right? So in 60 seconds or less, just tell us who you are outside of real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm married to Amanda, a beautiful wife of, 14 years now. And
Congratulations.
thank you so much. We've got two young boys, Ronald and Lewis. They are 9 and 11. Excuse me, hard to keep track. So they keep us busy. And then so for me, most of my free time is number one, coaching their sports, basketball, soccer, and football. And then additionally, myself, I've played sports my entire life, and at this point in my life, to this day, I continue to play indoor soccer as a goalkeeper. So,
Okay.
Yep.
Nice. Love to hear that. Love to hear that you're a family man, obviously a professional, and even a dad coach, getting out there. That, let me tell you, I already know, just being a father, being a parent, it's already time consuming. But to actually add going to and being actively involved in your kids' athletics is a whole nother beast. So I'm kind of curious. That's an easy segue into my next question is you basically just talking about your real estate business. I just want you to talk about the model of
Sure.
it, the whole strategy and what you do. But start off by going into how and why you started to become a real estate agent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I've been licensed now for, what is it? Oh my goodness, 26 years. I had to do the math there. And I got licensed when I was 19. And I'm a second generation realtor. My father was a real estate broker for 40 plus years. And while I was in college at Michigan State, he said, hey, he kind of created an internship. He called it an internship. And so I was passing out flyers for agents in our office in my hometown of Livonia. And I got to a point where I kind of have an encyclopedic knowledge of streets in Livonia because of all the flyers that I felt I passed out. But regardless, I did that for the first year, ended up getting a couple referrals. I was going to do that part-time. And then after a couple years at school, I decided to come back. I kind of fell into it is really the long story short. Come back home, and ever since 2002, I've been a full-time agent. So
beautiful,
yes.
Beautiful. And you juggling being a successful real estate agent. I want to put success on top of that.
Yeah.
With being, like we said, an active father, active husband, and things like that. Just briefly, tell us how you find this balance.
It's difficult. And the way I like to, but it's enjoyable. I wouldn't have it any other way. But the way I like to describe it is, and a lot of people do too. This is not a unique metaphor, but juggling a lot of different things. And so it's a matter of getting all those balls up in the air. And, this morning we had to take my son to his annual physical. And I had scheduled some stuff at the office. So every once in a while you end up clashing it, but you should see my calendar. It's there's something every day of the week. Sometimes Saturdays midday I have time. That's about it. So
nice.
Yes.
Yeah, you do what you can when you can.
Yes,
I get it 100%.
Yes.
Good. So we talked about briefly, right? You kind of breezed over the market that you serve. So let's talk about it in detail, if you don't mind. Just describe the market that you serve geographically for the people.
Yeah,
Paint
yeah,
that picture.
absolutely. So, currently, right now, I'm sitting in Canton, Michigan, licensed here in Michigan. Again, like I said, for 26 years. My office is in
Mm-hmm.
Canton. I live in Canton, and then in Wayne County, and then I grew up in Livonia, which is kitty corner. Livonia and Canton. For anybody that's out of the state or outstate, I went to Michigan State, which is an hour, basically west. And a lot of my friends would joke that everything west of Ann Arbor is Detroit. So, and again,
Pretty much.
I grew up in Livonia and live in Canton now, and really they're the same thing. But
Right,
they're
right, right.
two larger. So that's where I focus is my hometown and where I live now and the surrounding communities. And again, know both communities very well. So yes, geographically, we'll call that Western Wayne County, or also the 275 I-275 corridor. So, yep.
Okay. Well said. Well
Thank you.
said. Let's get into the economic part of it. Real estate data. What do you have? How is that market looking in regards to how real estate is moving around there?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I guess I would say the title, the preface to this section is interesting. The market has changed many times, certainly over the 26 years that I've been in the business. But
Mm-hmm.
recently, really, if we're looking at since the pandemic, early 2020, we've seen lots of changeover. But the predominant thing that's been occurring, and even before the lockdown, was low inventory. There are very
Yes.
few homes available for sale, and that kind of is occurring in two ways. So number one is just the overall amount of homes that exist are tight, and those are tight because there was underbuilding as far as new construction is concerned. We go back to the last big event in all of our lives, which was the Great Recession of 2009 through
Mm-hmm.
2011, and so there's that underbuilding of new construction. We're catching up now, but then also additionally, what we're seeing is that existing homes, there are very few that are available. And so that continues to be the case. It was in 2020, 2021, 2022. And what's kind of been interesting that we're seeing now is that interest rates have shot up. And that actually has further constrained inventory. So, what's unique here, we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing in this market is that there are fewer sales, but prices are continuing to go up. So,
Of
yes,
course, of course. It's supply and
yes,
demand.
sir.
Obviously, if there's short supply and high demand, it's going to raise prices. So that's the situation that we're in. Still in the seller's market, very much
Yep.
so. But it's a little bit different from what it has been over the years, the last couple years post pandemic. So we're starting to slowly see a little change, but nonetheless, it still skews towards the seller. So great information right there,
Yes.
Jason.
Thank you.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. You manage now or managed over 130 agents. Is
Yeah.
this
No,
correct?
that's 100%
That's
correct.
wild.
Yes.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. You have a huge task in your hands. Let's talk about it. You got a bunch of different personalities that you have to deal with. Managing people is a skill in
Yes.
itself. I don't think people necessarily understand. So the different personalities, characteristics, and work ethic, all of that. You have any examples of you kind of dealing with these agents and maybe having to resolve some type of conflict between the agents and or maybe fostering some sense of collaboration? Talk about how you did that and how effective it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's the personalities. It's so difficult. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
something where I do pretty good. I'm the type of person that gets along with a lot of different people. You look at sort of personality types. I think I'm an amiable, so I do a pretty good job of getting along with people. But even then, was kind of a learning curve for me. Is that just because I generally get along with almost everybody, the thing is that I'm not only dealing with almost everybody, I'm dealing with everybody.
Yeah.
And so that has
Mm.
been a skill that I had to hone, is that I would have people that were angry at me and I didn't know why. And it was because we communicated differently. Now, one thing I will say is we've really never run into where different agents in our office have had issues with each other. I don't have any
Okay.
good example
Good.
to talk about that. Uh, but
Okay.
it's more, yeah, again, the different personalities and going back to the disc assessment, right? And so the high D, these are the drivers, right? So and they have this fight or flight mentality, and so if I go at them too hard, if I just come in, and what it is, it's just kind of making a joke, being just a little bit, I don't know what you want to say, and then later they're angry with me. I've somehow offended them, and so I've just
Mm,
learned when you got to be a yes man. And right, I'm the manager, right? I'm the one supposed to be telling them things. But
right.
sometimes, well, as they say, you've got two ears and one mouth, and you should use them proportionately. And it's often the case. I do it that way.
Yeah, that's wise. That's wise game right there, I would say. What I will say is it's a great thing that you said you haven't had to deal with any conflict amongst the agents. That speaks to the culture and the environment that you set.
Right.
That's like, and I it's so funny I use this example often, but it's like Chick-fil-A. I don't know what they're doing in that training with those
Sure.
employees, but it seems like everybody gets along, everyone has a great attitude, personality. It just meshes well. And I imagine it'd be the exact same thing. Like not too much conflict. Everyone knows their role. Everyone does what they do. And then, like you said, you have to be a yes man in your position. That's a great way to explain it because essentially you're a resource. You are their
Right.
resource for any type of advice, guidance, support, and things like that. So I get it. I 100% get it. And like I said, it also speaks volumes to just how you're setting that environment amongst the agents, man. So job well done.
Yes, thank you very much. And I did want to mention sales manager, associate broker with my company. And then Chantel is the broker and owner of the company. We work together. And ultimately, she sets the tone for the company. But I'm pretty sure
Okay.
10 years ago when she hired me, she saw what I was, who I am, and that I fit in with that. And so, yeah, so we work well together, though.
Good,
Yes.
good, beautiful, man. You have an exceptional skill in, I believe you said, is in comping homes, comparing homes, home prices, home values, specifically in the neighborhood. I imagine this is a very valuable skill when you are doing, going through different contracts at the closing table or just transactions in general, I should say. So talk about this. Talk about this unique skill that you have and talk about a situation where it came into play and you just knew that I know what I'm doing when it comes to comping houses. I am a pro at this.
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. So, yeah, so I enjoy it. Again, talking about personality types. I'm an amiable, but I'm also an analytical. So I love the
Mm-hmm.
statistics. I love the numbers. Taking a look at them, analyzing them, and pricing out houses is, I like to say, equal parts art and science. And you got to know where the science ends and the art begins. And that's one of my
Mm.
favorite things. With our agents, supporting our agents here in the office, and I tell them, when I'm available to answer questions on, and certainly I'm going to help them with forms and some different things. But I always relish the opportunity to help them with comping out houses. And so, but yeah, my main mantra when I'm comping out houses for my listing is, I want to get the price right. I don't want to be
Mm-hmm.
too low. I don't. So there's a strategy where agents will go low in order to quote unquote create a bidding war, right? And I don't agree with that at all. And I doubt there are very many agents out there that would want to go too high because that causes all sorts of problems. Although sometimes agents will, and we call it in the industry, we'll buy a listing. We'll tell the seller whatever they want to
Mm.
hear in order to get the listing, to get that. But I believe wholeheartedly in pricing it right. But yeah, and I was looking back at some of the examples I've had in the last year as far as comping out properties. And again, it's an inexact science, but price it right. But usually I want to go a little bit high. I had a listing here in Western Wayne County. It's a little on the east side of Western Wayne, if that makes any sense. It's in
Mm-hmm.
Redford, which is between Livonia and Detroit. And and that's the other thing too, is talking about, like, local market knowledge. I know exactly what, Redford's an inner ring of suburb. It's an affordable area. You can't go too crazy with your pricing, because those folks will go to the next more expensive marketplace there. This house, I went in, and so that's a big part of listing and comping and all of it, is you want to kind of hedge your bets. I went in there and told them they need to do a number of different things to get the home ready for sale. They went in there and they did a lot of it. They didn't do all of it. I looked at the comps, and the comps were saying top end were, I'm going to use some actual numbers here, because that's who I am, but was about 160 top end. I looked at what they did, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go about 150. See where we end up at. We didn't get that interest that we wanted. Sometimes we don't know how the marketplace is going to react. But for me, that is all fine, because I want to get top dollar for my client. And really what I was happy with was the reduction then by 10,000 to 140. And we had immediate strong interest. And so for me, that is the perfect example. I had another one, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on that one, but I had another one in Farmington Hills where you could almost argue that I got it wrong. But no, my clients were pretty darn happy. But this was a beautiful 2,200 square foot ranch in Farmington Hills on about an acre. We listed it last March. The day that we had the pictures taken, it was a flurry of snow. But the client had done a lot of work since I helped them buy the property. And we ended up listing that one. Well, I went in there and I told them 349.9. As soon as I walked in the door, they came back and they said, well, look at all the stuff we did. I said, you know what? That's pretty sharp. I'll go with 360. Then they kept on sending me these comps after I told them my number. And so then we ended up at 369.9. We ended up getting 12 offers, and we closed at 405. So, but
nice.
So you could say, but hey, my clients were super happy. And the reason why that occurred is because it was a ranch in an area of colonials. And I wasn't sure exactly how an appraiser would treat that ranch in an area of colonials. And in general, my belief is that I think it's backed up by data too, that a ranch is more desirable than a two-story home. But I didn't know how the appraiser. Anyways, so I could this is where you got to rein me in a little bit, because I could get analytical just goes off. So.
Nah, we love that though. Yep. We love that though, Jason. You painted a perfect picture. You provided the numbers too, so I'm literally following along. But it's an interesting concept to put out there, the fact that the architectural styles can make a difference also, depending on the consistency of the architectural styles in the neighborhood. Like, if yours is different, is this going to hurt or help the situation with your listing? And obviously in your situation, it helped. And I'm hearing the same thing. Ranch style homes are starting to become a lot more popular. Right. Why would you say that from your personal opinion? Any thoughts?
I'm going to give you two reasons. One is kind of from the analytical side of the brain, is because there's no stairs to navigate, or few. There's the basement. The basement's optional. You got to go down to the basement. A lot of houses built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s locally, the laundry room is going to be in the basement. But a lot of people can move it upstairs. So that's number one. And then also, the population statistics are saying that we have an aging population. We've got the baby boomer generation, who is a big component in this marketplace. And they're, the builders are listening to baby boomers quite a bit. And then, the other part too is, I guess it's the same thing, but I think it's just a preference. People like for it to all be on the one level. But then what I find sometimes, you talk to people, folks with kids, they want the bedrooms upstairs and separated away. And so that's kind of the flip side. But the other part too, the statistical piece, is that ranches have a higher average price per square foot than two-story homes do. So,
There you
yes,
go. There you go.
yes,
Well said. So those are some legit reasons as to why ranch style homes are a lot more popular nowadays. I appreciate you for explaining
of
that.
course.
Your expertise and knowledge expands beyond that also into contracts and compliance also.
Right.
Why is this specifically important? Do you have any examples that show why that understanding and knowledge is important?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, and I'm thinking of a specific example. So I'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, I mean, for me in my position as associate broker, that's a big part of my job, is to understand contracts, compliance, fair housing, the realtor's code of ethics. And so anything that comes across my desk, I look at very thoroughly. I try to understand very thoroughly any sort of resources that are provided to us, to me, from the National Association of Realtors, the Michigan Association of Realtors, and our local board. I review very thoroughly. And and so number one, in my position as sales manager and associate broker here at Clients First Realtors, that's my job to help manage risk for our agents. It's also, to a certain extent, in working on my sales, my job to help my clients. So I'm not an attorney, right? But at the same time, to help my clients navigate, the marketplace and contracts. But with that said, as an associate broker, I had to. So in order to, I don't want to assume, your audience what they do and do not know about real estate. It takes us 40 hours
Mm-hmm.
of class time and passing a test with the state of Michigan to get licensed. And then in order to become a broker, it's 90 more hours and passing another test. And the class that
Mm-hmm.
I did, this was now 18 years ago. Wow. Was 60 hours. That was an expansion on the 40 hours, and then 30 hours of legal. And so as a
Mm.
broker, that's a big piece. What's the difference between a broker and a
Yeah.
salesperson? Number one, you can own your own company, but number two, you have to have an ability to understand the law and make some decisions based upon that. And so that is that's a big part of what I do. I don't know if you got any follow-ups. I do have the one example though I wanted to go over.
Yeah, please.
So yeah, there's one locally that was about 10 months ago that I closed right here in Canton. This is actually something that has come up two previous times in the last 4 years. So in the state of Michigan, every seller, except for a few very narrow exemptions, have to fill out the seller's disclosure statement per law.
Correct.
Yes. And they have to fill it out completely, and they just have to be honest. And
Honest, yeah.
the advice we give our clients is not much because we don't want to kind of act on behalf, act as if we're an attorney, but we'll say three things: disclose, disclose, disclose.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens sometimes, the trickiest question in the entire document, there's a top section, but then there's one it's question one. And it's regarding the foundation or the crawl space or the basement. Has there ever been evidence of water? Number one, that is the only question in there that is looking for a past condition. Has there ever been?
Right.
The rest of them are looking for current. So a lot of times the clients misread that, and then they'll just put no. Well, I had one here in Canton where it was in April. We had torrential downpours. I had an agent in my office doing an open house for me, and they go in the basement, and there's a wet spot by one of the drains down there.
Oh
And
man.
yeah, and so it really, and we, in this market, timing is everything. You get pictures, you do coming soon, you do
Mm-hmm.
all these things. So everything was I don't know, I wouldn't want to say perfect, but all lined up, right? And then here we are at the open house, 30 people through, and there's this wet spot. So so I talked, and my clients had said never been evidence of water. I called them up, and they're like, well, sometimes when there's a lot of rain, it does come up a little bit. And I said, well, guys, you need to disclose that.
Right,
Yes,
right.
and we're aware of that now. And so what I had them do is come on in and make an attachment to the seller's disclosure statement explaining the scenario where water does come up from time to time. They even had one scenario that was 30 years ago where it happened one time and they fixed it. I was like, you got to disclose that too. And so they put that in there, and we lost one buyer because of it. And then,
Oh,
unfortunately, um,
yeah,
it
yeah.
happened. So, but we got a second buyer, and we told them about it, and they agreed to it. So, so the point there is that we really need to make sure that we're in compliance with the law, because that could create a headache. But also for, I don't know who's listening, sellers 100%, other agents too as well. I tell my agents this as well, is don't be fearful of these scenarios, because we ended up getting a very strong buyer. I chose this example. I had two previous examples where we had scenarios where it was water in the basement. The buyer backed out. We amended the seller's disclosure statement, and we got another better offer. So,
There it
yeah,
is. Oh
yeah,
man. See, everything happened. That's a perfect example of everything happens for a reason.
exactly.
Now, what I want to speak on is I get it. As a seller, it could be very, very tough. You finally make the decision to leave your home that you've been in for X amount of years, X amount of time. Now you're leaving. Let's say you've been there for, like you said, 30 years. Now you're selling. You have to get to a point where you have to disclose that information, like you said, something that may have happened 20, 30 years ago. You may have overlooked it, may have forgot it, may have thought, okay, it never happened since then, so it's solved. But you have to put that type of information
Yeah,
down. And I feel like that might be tough for a lot of people, especially selling a home. But it's not necessarily always going to be a make or break situation. I'll say, for lack of better terms, it doesn't necessarily mean that your house is invaluable. I
right.
will say you may get one buyer that says no, this isn't for me, but then you can turn around and get someone else who says this is for me. This is a perfect situation, and I'll take advantage of it. So I can understand the mindset of the seller, but yeah, like you said, you got to disclose that information, man.
You got to do
You
it,
got to
and
disclose
there's always going
that.
to
Yeah,
be a tomorrow, right? You know,
yeah, for sure, for
another.
sure.
So yeah.
No, good point, good point. Since you have your experience spans over different decades, man, I want to see if you can reflect on a memory, like the most memorable memory, right? From your experience, maybe something that was pivotal. I was going to ask maybe of a first time homeowner, home buyer, I should say, but let's just go to any experience, any your most memorable experience helping a client obtain a property
Yeah, so
or sell.
I've got two examples. One's pivotal, and the other one is kind of pivotal, but also a really good example of a first time home buyer, where I learned a lot. In
Okay.
both of these instances, so I don't know how anybody would ever do their job that I'm in as associate broker, sales manager, without reflecting on their experiences and having
Mm-hmm.
some of the same stories that you tell over and over again. And I was trained in this business by my father, and he had a whole, treasure trove of stories, and many of them that he went over and over a couple times. So the one I've got is, at Westland Colonial. So Westland, I mentioned Livonia and Canton. It's just lodged in between the two. It's east of
Mm-hmm.
Canton and south of Livonia. It's a community that I've done a lot of sales in. And so this was in 2013. So kind of looking at the ebb and flow of the real estate marketplace, when I first got in the business, the market was really strong. Then we had the Great Recession. And so at
Mm-hmm.
that point, I haven't even touched on this because it's a distant memory that I'd rather not talk about. But I did a lot of bank owned sales back in 2005 through 2012. And so it's a whole different skill set. And
Yes.
you're
Yes.
just got particular tasks that you're doing, and it's kind of redundant, but that's what we had to do. So I had that skill set. It was looking good. I was good at filling out reports and sending it to corporate entities. But then in 2013, I got a good old fashioned listing. A family's looking to sell. They're relocating. I think to Indiana, if I remember correctly. And quite
Mm-hmm.
honestly, from 2005 to 2012, I did so many of these bank owned and got into a particular groove that my skill dealing with a normal sale scenario on a listing wasn't there. And so this Westland Colonial, a desirable home. In fact, I walked my wife through the home as something I thought would be good for us at that time. But yeah, my skills weren't there, and it is something that I have referenced over and over and over again with my agents here in the office. And in fact, talking about comping out houses, my skill certainly was there in pulling up the comps, but then making that decision on those comps is where I wasn't in a good position. And so, again, for
Mm.
me, I remember numbers. At that point, and the problem in 2013 was that we did not have too many. And I know, you said at one point you were in the lending industry, arm's length transactions. We didn't have a lot of
Oh
those that
yeah.
occurred. They're all bank owned. They were all short sales. And so it was hard to comp out the
Mm-hmm.
property. So I looked at the comps and I went in there and I was just very honest with them. And I said, it's hard to say. These comps aren't the greatest. I wouldn't go any more than 200. I would say 199.9. Maybe I'd try 2049. He's like, well, if we're going to do 2049, why not 2099? I was like, sure.
Uh-oh.
I just told you 199.9. You want to test the market. You understand the dangers of what you're doing. And then he's like, well, what if, and this guy is just a particular mentality. But and then he's like, well, if we're doing 2199, why not 219.9? And so
Oh.
so I agreed to it. And so what ends up happening, we put it on the market. We have very little interest. Everybody's telling us that it's overpriced. I reduced it one time to 2099. That's not enough. We reduced it again to 199.9. I believe if we listed it for 199.9 for minute one, we would have gotten 190 or 195. And
Yeah, yeah.
instead, we sold it for 175 is what we ended. Yes.
Oh no.
So,
From 219.
yes.
Oh.
So, in a perfect example of, well, so number one for the client, I would hope that he would make some better decisions. Like he would understand that you can be too greedy. But really, it's our job as real estate agents to kind of save our clients from themselves. For me to say no right then, 199.9. If he really pushed me, maybe go to 2049. But it would have been a
Mm-hmm.
much, so that whole scenario I look at almost every single day, in the last 10 or
Yeah.
11 years. So,
Yeah. I know you can think back to that situation and
yep,
just think about so many different things that could have been done right, done different. And, hey, but overall, it's a learning situation. You just take that, you reflect on it. Like you said, it's important to reflect. And then you just learn and you continue to not make those mistakes
right.
again going forward, essentially.
Yes.
So that would be insanity. So man, that what a crazy situation. But obviously your professionalism still got you through the situation. It's unfortunate that the price wasn't what was desired initially, but it is what it is. Like we said, it's part of the game.
Yes.
So
Definitely.
we learn a lot. Speaking of learning, though, let's talk about us learning from you in regards to maybe a movie, book,
Yes.
quote, or even just philosophy that you live by that kind of helps shape your life personally or professionally. You could share with us.
Yeah, definitely. My first thought on that is, we talked about it earlier, which is being flexible. But actually, more
Mm-hmm.
I thought about it, this one, and it's really almost it kind of ends up being real estate specific, but then has examples in real life. So it's from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People,
Oh
classic
my
book.
goodness. Yeah, I
Yes.
look.
Yep.
Yep. Come on,
By
man.
Stephen R.
Come on.
Covey. I think it was
Yeah.
original in like 1990 or something, or
Yep.
95.
Yep.
And so in there's an excerpt. It's win-win or no deal. So he goes through all the different scenarios of win-win, win-lose, lose-win, lose-lose. And then he ends up on win-win. And you're reading it and you're like, oh, this is pretty awesome. I'm voting for win-win. And then he's like, no,
Yep.
there's a higher realization of that concept, which is win-win or no deal. And so I think it's a great example for myself and for real estate agents and
Mm-hmm.
sellers and buyers to understand in the transaction is let's have as our goal to find a win-win both parties, and it's
Man,
not
yeah.
always possible, right? So if not, that's the genius piece. Win-win is kind of obvious a little bit. It's like we don't
Mm-hmm.
got a deal. Let's move on with our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So which I just said, let's
Man.
move on with our lives. It's funny. One of my agents came into my office about a week ago for some advice, and throughout the conversation, I would say, "And let's move on with our lives." So that was her favorite phrasing is "Let's move on with our lives." But that's that win-win or no deal
True.
scenario. So yep,
True.
yep,
True, man. I love that. That was I just talked to a guest not too long ago about that
okay,
same book. I literally have the hardcover and I read it back in like high
sure,
school, and it changed my perception on a lot of different
yeah,
things. But then I gotta revisit that book, man. I gotta revisit that book. I highly recommend that same
yeah,
book, man. Well said. Perfect place to land the plane too, Jason.
sure.
Thank you so much for being here. At this point, if you have any last words or want to tell people how to reach out to you, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, well, number one, I really appreciate you having me on here. I love talking about real estate. I got a lot rolling around up here. I really appreciate you reaching out to me. And one thing, just my passion. You asked what my passion is, and I guess helping our agents succeed is my passion now. But my secondary passion as a real estate agent, I really do enjoy working with first-time home buyers, and that
There
is
it is.
something I really focus on. But again, Jason Borregard, Clients First Realtors. We're based in Canton. We're on Ford Road. And my cell phone number is 734-751-2209. Anybody has got any questions, call or text. My email is J Beauregard, so BORREGARD at clientsfirstrealtors.com. And that's what I got.
There it is. Thank you so much again, Jason. Appreciate you. For our YouTube audience watching right now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, do us both a favor, hit the like button, please, and thank you. Make sure you also share the content and subscribe for our latest content. And if you are listening on Apple, Spotify, or any other podcast platforms, please do the same. Give us a like, 5-star rating, and subscribe to our channel. And Jason, I always like to leave our audience with a thought-provoking question before they leave. So this is for you, audience. Do you prefer a ranch-style home or a multi-level home? Or what style home do you prefer and why? Don't tell us now. Leave it in the comments below. Besides that, we'll talk to you next time.